So, greetings everybody. I'm with Calam, who is an actor, and we are in Brixton on a beautiful spring morning, and we're going to have a chat about TM. Let's start right at the beginning. What prompted you to think about, I want to do some meditation of some sort? What were you doing? Where were you up to? What was going on in your life?
Well, I suppose I'd experimented with meditation quite a bit before I learnt TM. So I'd done the thing, I think probably when I was at university, so I was 20, 21, I started to use apps, things like Headspace, and because I felt like the idea of more presence, in everyday life, at that point in everyday life, later on for my work, but felt really appealing, something I wanted to access and something I didn't always feel I had access to. So I started using those apps a little bit.
Okay.
Nothing really stuck, I think. I found it hard to establish a pattern, I suppose, get into a rhythm with it. So then I stopped, basically. I stopped for probably 3 or 4 years when I left university. So up to, when I was 20.
So you used them for 3 or 4 years?
I used them, intermittently.
And Okay.
Yeah, go on.
Can I just wind back?
Yeah.
So you said you were looking for a way to be more present. This wasn't to do with work. This was to do with your just life in general.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you were missing out on things, or were you too much in your head? What was the perceived problem that you felt needed to be addressed?
Yeah, that's a good question. I suppose I probably did feel like I was in my head a little too much, and I think I felt like I'd had glimpses of a different way of kind of experiencing life that had just happened to me. They'd happened in not always kind of incredible, unusual circumstances, but just glimpses into like when a veil was lifted for a second and I kind of experienced something, feeling, not to be too kind of cliche, but feeling connected with something universal. And that feeling felt great, and I wanted to be in touch with it more often, I suppose. So that was probably where it started. I think I've always been interested in like different states of consciousness, and that just felt like it was an opportunity for me to try something new.
Yeah.
But like I said, the apps didn't really do it for me. So I then, when I was 25, just after I finished on Bridgerton, in fact, like 3 days after I wrapped on that, I did Vipassana. I learned Vipassana. I went on the 10-day.
That was the 10-day thing.
Yeah. I'd heard about it. A friend of a friend, or a friend of mine at a dinner party had said, "Oh, my friend just did this 10-day long retreat," and I just had quite a kind of comfortable year with work, and everything in my life was quite settled, and I felt like doing something, pushing myself in some way, and that was something about the intensity of that experience that appealed to me, because I do like an intense experience in general. I found it really, really tough doing it, but I did feel you're kind of forced to experience a different state of consciousness, 10 days of no talking and 10 hours of meditation every day. But I found it really hard to then, because with Vipassana, the whole thing is you then practice 2 hours a day, or you're supposed to practice 2 hours a day when you get home.
Yeah.
And even though I'm an actor and sometimes I have time, it just felt impossible to do that. But in the back of my mind, TM had been there.
So you were aware of it?
I was aware of TM.
Okay.
Because of David Lynch, basically. I'm a big fan of his work. I think like lots of people are, but I think I watched Twin Peaks for the first time about 3 years ago, and then The Return.
Which Twin Peak? The first one?
I watched the first 2 series,
Okay.
the 90 and 91 series, and then I watched the 2017 one. Yeah. And there's something I don't think I can quite articulate what it is about it that I love. But it's funny because it felt related to those moments I'd had where, the way I described a kind of veil lifting, something in his work felt connected to something really, really true and primal about the human experience. And then I saw that he was really, talks so much about TM and speaks so highly of it and has practiced for so long. And I thought I'd love some of that kind of, the way his brain works, I'd love to have some of that in my life. So then, I thought about it. I was away with work quite a lot last year, and then I had a couple of months, and I thought I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
So just to check that I've understood, because it's very interesting. Because a lot of people come to meditation, TM, because as a sort of stress buster management kind of thing. But you were after higher states of consciousness, really, it sounds like. Is that right?
I think so. I mean, I think there's like practical things that I have experienced and was keen for when I signed up to learn the practice. But yeah, I think maybe in kind of like I think you know, the apps, or what I found with the apps is they're so much designed to give you like an instant release, an instant gratification of, I remember they even have like the sleep one, or do you know what I mean? And I understand the market for that, and that's appealing. Of course, instant relief from any negative emotion that's a lovely idea, and sometimes possible. But I think what I'd experienced with Vipassana was that maybe I wasn't going to do something and then be cured of any, you know, things I had going on internally. I think that's not what I'm looking for really anymore, and it wasn't what I was looking for with TM. I was just looking to, I went in really open in terms of what it might give me in a way that I hadn't before with meditation, and that was, I think, a good thing for me.
Okay, good. And have you got anything to say about the course itself, if you can remember? What was your experience of the 4-day course?
It was great. I mean, it felt very mild in comparison to my only other kind of yardstick was Vipassana, and that felt so all-encompassing in times a claustrophobic kind of way. I liked that it felt like there was lots of time. I felt like I really learned how to practice, but I also had time for myself in the evenings, in between the days, or at lunch or whatever, for things to just kind of percolate, and also to be in the context of normal life. I thought that was quite important, because I was immediately seeing the way a meditation in the morning, or, you know, I suppose we were doing more when we were learning, might influence the way I was for the next hour, or, you know, might just have an effect on all my relationships with my friends, family, whatever, you know, because you were still having those relationships during the 4 days. So that was really, I felt like that was like an immediate feedback loop of like I could see what was happening a little bit, you know, which was really helpful for me.
Yeah. Because the whole thing about TM is that it's not like running away from life. It's a way to make life better. So integrating it with your day-to-day. Okay, so that was the course. And then what did you, in the immediately following the course, what did you experience? What did you notice?
I think I felt, you know, it's funny you say, you know, a lot of people come to meditation or TM specifically as like a, you know, for stress busting. I did in fact notice a reduction maybe in my levels of stress, even though that wasn't really what I went in for. But I think probably the job I do is so much of an emotional roller coaster, not just when you're working, but, you know, auditioning, you never really know what life is going to look like in a year's time, and it's so rare. And that's a big appeal for me, but it's also, it can be hard to regulate your emotions, I suppose.
The uncertainty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, in the immediate aftermath, just helped me. It felt like the peaks and troughs were maybe more even, and not in a kind of dulling way. I just felt I had maybe a little more perspective or a little more control of my emotional state in a really useful way. So that was maybe the first thing that I noticed in the immediate aftermath.
And that was in your personal life. Were you working at the time, or did you go like? So I suppose my question is, shortly after learning, did you go to work? And if so, did you notice any difference in work?
So I just done. I think I have to be careful with what I say about Lord of the Rings, but I'd just done a big block of filming before I did my course, and then I had I think about 2 weeks of off basically, and then the next thing I did, the next time I could implement it work-wise, was a play I did in Dublin, and that was really interesting. It was really interesting. It was great. I think it really helped my practice, because the great thing about doing a play is the times are regular. So with filming, you might be filming one day, you know, you're up at 4 a.m. The next day you start at 5 p.m. You know, whatever. It's difficult to establish a regular time for your practice. Whereas with rehearsal, every morning and as soon as I got home, I knew my timings. So just to get into that rhythm early on was really, really helpful for me. But I think the moment where I've noticed the most benefit so far has been when we started performance. So my call was maybe 6:30 to get into the theatre, and I'd meditate in the morning. But then what I loved, and I think it's something I'll try and keep on set as well, that'll be harder to kind of figure out a place for it, but about an hour before I go on stage to start the show, I'd have a meditation then, and I think ritual is important for an actor often, to get in the right mindset to kind of switch into the zone or the character or whatever. But I found that meditation was just like, I couldn't wait for it every day, and it just keyed me into just feeling so ready to go,
That's so cool.
It was great. Yeah.
That's so
It was
cool.
really great, and that was not something I'd really thought about before when I started the course, but a really, really happy byproduct.
So it kind of sets you, creates the state so that you can go on.
It does, and it was like no matter what got on in the day before, I knew I had that time. And I suppose that, more generally, I think, especially, I don't know if I can say too much about the kind of mechanics of the way TM works, but because you're not, it doesn't feel like a struggle to meditate ever. You're not trying to kind of, it feels like the kind of, or certainly in my course, my teacher wanted to stress that it wasn't, you weren't trying to reach something the whole time.
It should be easy.
Exactly. That takes the pressure off in a way I hadn't experienced before with meditation, where I was like, I'm not able to follow my breathing, or I'm not, I was getting frustrated that I couldn't, because I like being able to do things well. And I felt like I couldn't, and then that's a bit of a put off, for me.
Okay. Any other changes or benefits that you've noticed?
I think I've maybe become a little more aware of some of the less helpful things in my life,
Inside or
I would say maybe
people
outside.
and situations?
People, well, maybe less people, but habits. I think I'm maybe slightly more aware of things I do, particular comfort things I might do, or why I do them. Do you know what I mean? Crutches you might use to regulate one's emotions, I suppose. It just feels a little clearer to me now as to why those things happen. Doesn't mean I've stopped doing them, but
you're becoming more self-aware.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe there is a bit more self-awareness in there, but it's I haven't had a kind of epiphany moment. It's been a gentle realization, but it's nice because I suppose what self-awareness can give you, if not necessarily an impulse to suddenly take away all negative influence in your life, but just a feeling of more conscious living, at least. So I know when I do things why I'm doing them a little more, I think.
That can be really helpful. Okay, and what about actually doing the meditation? You said, when you're, in theatre, it's easier because you have a regular routine. When you're on film, what do you call it?
On set,
On set, how's it been managing to meditate regularly, or do you have to just kind of roll with it?
You have to roll with it a little more, I'd say. Especially, I think, because your body... I did so many night shoots earlier this year. That was really... It was hard to manage because... I think as well, for me, a day on set is really long. Especially if you're going into makeup and prosthetics and stuff. You get in there... If we start the shooting day at 8, sometimes you have to get there at 5 or whatever in the morning. And if I'm travelling a long way, that means I pick up at 3:30 in the morning. So, there's a lot of... It's a long time. And there are other things which I have to, I suppose I don't have to do, but like going to the gym, for example, I would argue I do, it's an important part of my work, maybe.
Got to stay healthy.
Exactly, got to stay healthy and fit. But carving out a space, I suppose what's been helpful is to see the benefit I'm having a little more, because then I'm ascribing more importance to making sure I get the meditations in. But it is harder, and sometimes, in terms of not having eaten 2-3 hours before, that I can't always do that, and I do notice a difference in the quality of my meditation if I have just eaten. But sometimes it's just the way it, you have 20 minutes for food, you have to get it in, and then it so happens you've got a break. So in an ideal world, it wouldn't be like that, but unfortunately that's like most of my life, because it's rare that I've done theatre. And even when I'm at home, you and I had planned to meet last week, and then suddenly I got an audition through, and then maybe I've got to spend the whole night before learning lines and making sure I've got it. So you have to be, I think I've had to, for someone who likes to get things right and to establish routine, I've had to just be a little more gentle on myself, maybe, because it can't always happen the way I would love if I had, set times every day, but I can't really do that.
Yeah, that's true. You gotta don't stress out about meditation.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Do you think your life would be different if you hadn't learned?
Yeah, I think it's tricky for me to say, because, like you say, it's only been a few months that I've been practicing, but I feel like TM was it became a really important part of the work I was able to do on stage every night in Dublin, and doing that play had a real, I think as an actor often you're kind of, maybe this is a little not always, not with all work, but you're looking for a kind of, to work through things through your work, right, to have a kind of versions of little catharsis, and
personally,
I think
really?
so.
I did not know that.
Certainly for me, that's when it feels best, which is maybe a bit self-indulgent. The audience probably aren't getting any of it, but for me, I think being able to go to places that you wouldn't always go in everyday life and access parts of yourself, and I just felt that TM, even if that was the only thing I got from it for the next 5 years, it would be worth it for me, because it just gave me a freedom. And we spoke to some school groups who came, and or drama groups who came to the show, and afterwards I said to them all, I was like, guys, you've got to do TM if you're
really.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was like, it's really, I feel like it's changed my approach as an actor and given me things that I didn't really know I was missing as well. I wouldn't have said before, I don't know, I felt great on stage, but there was kind of just a precision that I felt I had that I didn't before, and an access to my emotions.
So obviously I'm not an actor, I don't know how it works, but I just see if I can summarize what you said, because it's so interesting that, I presume as an actor you have to step into a human that you might not be. So if you think of yourself as a nice person,
right,
in general life, to play a villain, a baddie, psychopath, let's say, you kind of have to become someone else. Is that right, or is that a type of acting?
I suppose people would have different. I guess people would have different approaches. And
is that method acting?
I guess it's a little more, maybe what you're describing is a version of that a method acting, maybe. And it's not, I certainly wouldn't be staying in character outside of, but I think
no, but when you're actually, I don't mean all the time, like Marlon Brando, whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm just interested what you just said about having to fathom parts of yourself to bring out into your work. Is that right?
I think for me, when I feel I'm doing my best work, is when I'm able to. I never want there to be a gap between someone I'm playing and me. I think it should be as if it's me, but I was put in that person's circumstance. The cradles were swapped at birth, and then that's the way that it makes sense to me. And then I suppose a byproduct of that is, like when I was doing this play, I was playing someone from the 19th century Norway who had syphilis, which was terminal at the time, and died on stage, this horrible syphilitic fit every night. And of course, so much of that is not me, thank God. But I suppose in terms of the emotions he's feeling, guilt, self-disgust, there's parts of me that feel those things. So I in order to play him, I think as truthfully as possible, it's my version of what that would be. It's what if Calam lived in Norway, and that's
okay.
And I do think, because sometimes as an actor, especially with something like that, where they've got to go to such an intense, dark place every night, and I think you can get really, for me anyway, I can get worried about getting there, and what if you don't get there, and then you have to kind of fake it, or you just don't, and it's kind of less powerful. I just had an ease with getting in touch with different intense emotions that I think that was at least partly to do with TM.
That is really cool.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, this is amazing.
Really cool.
Exactly, yeah. That's how I felt.
Gives me shivers. Wow. Okay. I wonder how. We won't go into that. I mean, that's kind of, well, whatever. Yeah, let's take it. Okay. If you had a friend who had kind of, either you thought that TM would be a good thing for them, or they'd registered an interest but were on the fence. Is there any things you could say to them to sort of help them over the line?
I think I didn't, to relate it back to acting, I didn't go to drama school, but what I hear about, you know, people who did is that you get kind of a box of tools, and some of them will be useful and some of them won't, and that's, you're not going to become a particular type of actor. You can kind of choose what you, and I think that in a way TM feels to me like a tool you can, it's just a great thing to have in your back pocket. Do you know what I mean? It's not, I think so many people go into looking for a quick fix with meditation. Certainly I did before, and I think maybe it was where I was in my life at the time, but I think also just the kind of culture in TM, the culture that I experienced, the way I was taught, it took all the pressure off, and I just think you won't have there's no chance you'll have a bad time. Do you know what I mean? There's no chance you'll get, I think everyone will get something useful out of it, and especially if you can establish a kind of a regular practice.
I've asked all my questions. Thank you.
That's
Anything else you feel in the top of your mind to share out?
No, I mean, I think the only other thing I've kind of, in terms of TM, that has been an interesting journey, I suppose, is not getting too caught up in like a pleasurable meditation. I think I've had moments where things have happened.
Do you mean not thinking that everyone's going to be like roses?
No, not even that. It's more like, I think meditations where you're more distracted, or in comparison to ones where you feel like you are getting in touch with a kind of transcendental state. It's been a journey in terms of teaching myself not to crave that too much, and being okay with the fact that not every meditation is a really profound experience, you know.
Because they vary.
Exactly, yeah. And it definitely doesn't feel like a straight line for me in terms of I've got better at it, or do you know, it feels like kind of not random, but I think you have to be able to take the rough with the smooth. Yeah. Well, one of the instructions is that you don't judge the success of the meditation based on experiences during the meditation. Yeah. Which is a little bit odd. At first glance, that sounds a bit weird, but it's because mainly the benefits are found afterwards. But when people first come, they think that the goal of meditation is found during meditation, which is fair enough. Yeah. So that they expect it to be 20 minutes of like Zen silence, but really the whole point of TM is to change your life 24/7. Yeah. Or at least when you're awake. Yeah. And it's a tool to achieve that. So you know, in general, the judgment, if there is going to be any, would be on, you know, like, you know, just things in one's afterwards. Totally. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you, sir. No, not at all. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the time. I think that was good. Great.